As a child, I could probably ride before I could walk. I was brought up with ponies. It was supposed to be a quiet royal afternoon, a gathering of family, tradition, and innocent celebration. But one careless laugh from Queen Camilla aimed at young Princess Charlotte's dress sparked something no one expected. In a world where every royal gesture is scrutinized, what began as a whispered insult behind palace doors quickly spiraled into a full-blown storm. Charlotte may be young, but she's her mother's daughter and Diana's granddaughter. What happened next stunned even the most seasoned royal watchers. This is the story of a dress, a laugh, and the moment the future princess showed the world just how powerful grace can be. A dress, a laugh. The whisper at the staircase. The late afternoon sun filtered through the towering windows of Balmoral's West Wing as the royal family assembled for a private luncheon. It was one of those carefully choreographed moments off the record. No cameras, just family. Princess Charlotte had chosen her outfit with care. A pale blue vintage-inspired dress with lace trim and a velvet sash. It was classic, elegant, and unmistakably sentimental. It had belonged to her great-grandmother, borrowed with permission from a royal archive rarely touched. But it wasn't the dress that captured the room's attention. It was the reaction. As Charlotte descended the grand staircase, her little hand smoothing out the pleats, a faint chuckle echoed from the far corner of the room. Camilla, standing beside a cluster of senior royals, leaned toward a companion and muttered something beneath her breath. It was meant to stay private, but whispers have a way of traveling in quiet halls. "She looks like she stepped out of a period drama," Camilla said, lips curled in amusement. Those near her stifled laughter, unsure whether to follow her lead or remain neutral. But one person didn't laugh. Prince George heard it, and Charlotte saw it on his face. The sparkle of pride in her brother's eyes suddenly dimmed. That was the moment something shifted. Charlotte's smile faltered. Her steps slowed, and though she completed her descent with poise, the room felt colder somehow. William noticed. So did Kate. It wasn't just a joke. It was a dig. A subtle jab wrapped in polished humor delivered by the queen consort to a child barely old enough to understand its full weight. But that's the cruelty of palace culture. It doesn't wait for you to be old enough. Charlotte didn't cry. She didn't speak. But as the family began to gather around the long table set with fine china and gilded silverware, she quietly excused herself. No one stopped her. No one asked why. It was the kind of moment that could have passed unnoticed, folded into the tapestry of royal life. But the hush that followed, the awkward glances and the silence between courses said everything. In the corner, Camilla continued her conversation, her expression untouched by regret. Perhaps she thought the moment had passed. But upstairs, in a small dressing room overlooking the garden, Princess Charlotte sat on a window bench, clutching the edge of her skirt, staring at the velvet sash between her fingers. Her reflection in the glass didn't show a girl embarrassed by her outfit. It showed something else entirely. A seed had been planted, and the girl in the blue dress was about to do something no one expected. Because when you mock a Windsor, the moment might pass. But when you mock Diana's granddaughter, history has a way of responding. Charlotte's reaction behind the curtain. Behind the curtain. Charlotte didn't cry. Not in the way most children might have when embarrassed. She didn't storm off or fling herself onto the bed like a child having a tantrum. Instead, she walked quietly, deliberately, away from the main room and down the corridor toward a part of the estate only a few of the younger royals used for play and reflection. She slipped into the small drawing room, tucked behind heavy velvet curtains, a space lined with antique dolls and porcelain tea sets that had once belonged to Queen Victoria's own children. It was quiet there, safe. But what she did next surprised even the palace staff member who happened to pass by. Charlotte didn't collapse into tears. She sat upright, crossed her legs carefully at the ankle like her mother had taught her, and stared at her dress in the mirror. Her fingers moved to the lace trim, smoothing the edges as if trying to make sense of what had just happened. She whispered something to herself, and though no one could hear the words, the intent was clear. She was anchoring herself. The room lined with royal toys and echoes of history became her sanctuary, but not for escape, for gathering her thoughts. She rose slowly and walked over to a small shelf that held royal mementos and hand-me-downs. On the highest level sat a photograph of Diana holding a young William, smiling in a way that felt like sunlight. Charlotte stood on her tiptoes, lifted the frame gently, and studied her grandmother's face. That photo wasn't supposed to be within reach, but it had been moved recently by Princess and, who often said Charlotte reminded her of Diana in ways no one else dared to say aloud. That moment of stillness lasted several minutes. Then, just as quietly as she had entered, Charlotte placed the frame back and walked out of the room. Only this time, she didn't return to the gathering. She walked upstairs, past her usual suite, past the guest rooms, until she reached her mother's dressing quarters. Kate was seated near a tall mirror, adjusting her earrings, her posture still tense from the comment she had overheard. When Charlotte entered, Kate turned immediately, her eyes softening. She didn't ask questions. She didn't press. She simply opened her arms. Charlotte walked into them. In that embrace, words weren't needed. But then Charlotte did something unexpected. She looked up at her mother and asked, "May I change?" Kate blinked, unsure. "You love that dress," she said gently. Charlotte nodded. "I do, but I want to wear something she would never expect." Kate smiled faintly, understanding immediately. This wasn't a retreat. This was a strategy. A quiet decision to rise above it, not by shrinking, but by standing even taller. Together, they went to Charlotte's wardrobe. The girl who had been mocked for her lace and velvet was about to return to that luncheon. But she wouldn't return the same. The curtain had lifted, and Charlotte had chosen her next act. Kate's fierce response. Kate's fierce response. The air inside the dining hall had turned noticeably stiffer. Conversations slowed, and the mood felt more performative than familial. The laughter that had bounced freely minutes earlier now sounded forced. William's eyes kept darting toward the hallway, toward the place where Charlotte had vanished. He wasn't alone. Kate returned a few moments later, her expression composed, but unmistakably colder. She re-entered with the still grace of a seasoned duchess. But there was a slight squaring of her shoulders, a deliberate precision in her walk, the kind of posture that meant something was coming. Camilla sat comfortably near King Charles, sipping her tea and gesturing toward a bouquet arrangement on the table. She hadn't noticed Kate standing quietly behind her until the room fell silent again. Camilla turned, still wearing the smile of someone in control, but Kate didn't smile. She leaned in just slightly and said something no one else heard, but everyone saw the queen consort's face tighten. Kate didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She had perfected the art of making a point without theatrics. The power wasn't in what she said aloud, but in the timing, the poise, and the message beneath her calm expression. It was the look of a lioness whose cub had just been mocked, and who didn't tolerate such things, even behind palace walls. William joined her moments later. His face was unreadable, but the subtle tension in his jaw spoke volumes. The way he positioned himself beside Kate wasn't protective. It was supportive, as if to say, "We're united in this." Camilla tried to regain her footing, offering a dry remark about the challenges of keeping up with fashion these days, but it fell flat. No one laughed, not even Charles. The silence spoke louder than any rebuke. The staff continued to serve the next course, but the room felt weighted. Kate sat across from Camilla now, her expression calm but unreadable. William offered Charlotte's empty chair a glance and then without fanfare moved it slightly, signaling her seat was still hers, still protected. No one dared fill it. Then the moment that shifted, everything arrived. Charlotte returned, but not in the same dress. She walked in wearing a striking emerald green ensemble, modern, sleek, and bold.